The late afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows of my downtown apartment, casting a warm glow on the soft cream sofa where I sat, nursing a cup of chamomile tea. I smoothed the silk blouse against my arm, trying to calm the flutter of nerves in my chest. My phone buzzed again, another message from someone I hadn't heard from in years. My thumb hovered over the screen, hesitating. It was Margaret, the woman who had once scoffed at me, telling me, right in front of my children, that they weren't important, that I would never make it beyond the ordinary life she assumed I was destined for. I could still hear her sharp, condescending tone, the way her eyes rolled with disbelief. For years, those words had echoed in my mind, a sting I carried quietly beneath my calm exterior. Yet, sitting here, with the soft hum of the city below and the smell of coffee lingering in the air, I felt something else, a quiet, satisfying pride. The life she had dismissed, the children she had mocked, they were thriving. I was thriving. My heart tightened for a second, imagining her reaction if she knew just how far we'd come. I took a slow breath, feeling the smooth porcelain of my teacup in my hands, and finally opened the message. The words on the screen made my pulse quicken. An unexpected meeting, an invitation she thought was insignificant, but for me, it was the beginning of a reckoning. I remember the day vividly, even though it was years ago. The air in my childhood home felt heavy, a mix of tension and the faint scent of polished wood. I was younger then, a new mother, juggling sleepless nights and a job that barely paid enough to keep the bills in order. My children, bright, curious little souls, were my world, and I poured everything I had into them. Yet, in that living room, Margaret, my sister-in-law, had the audacity to sneer at me. "Honestly, Emma," she said, leaning against the doorway with her arms crossed, "your kids aren't going to matter in the long run. You're wasting your time chasing dreams that will never pay off." Her words hit me like a slap I hadn't seen coming. My hands shook, clutching the edge of the sofa, and a lump formed in my throat. I wanted to scream, to tell her she had no right, but the words lodged somewhere deep, heavy and painful. That day, I felt small, diminished, and utterly alone in a house that should have felt like safety. Grandma Ruth noticed my trembling hands. She had been watching quietly, as she always did, her eyes soft with understanding. She placed a delicate silver locket around my neck, her fingers lingering for a moment. "Keep this close," she whispered. "It's more than jewelry, Emma. It's a reminder that no one gets to decide your worth, not even family. Remember, strength grows quietly, and the right time will make the world notice." Those words clung to me as I left that house, shoulders straight, heart aching but determined. I had made a choice that day. Though my path was uncertain, I would prove, not to Margaret or anyone else, but to myself, that I was capable of more than their dismissive judgments. That spark, tucked in my chest like the locket itself, became the seed of a life I was determined to build. From that moment on, every sleepless night, every early morning, every small sacrifice was fuel. The sting of rejection had lit a fire within me that no one could extinguish. Not Margaret, not circumstance, not doubt. After leaving that suffocating house behind, I felt both terrified and exhilarated. I was a single mother with 2 little children, a modest savings account, and a dream that felt impossibly distant. But Grandma Ruth's words echoed in my mind. Strength grows quietly, and the right time will make the world notice. I started small. I took evening courses in business management while juggling bedtime stories and diaper changes. My children's laughter became a fuel I carried into every lecture and late-night assignment. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, papers spread across it, the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional giggle from my kids providing a soundtrack to my determination. Every lesson I learned, every skill I mastered, felt like a tiny victory, though I couldn't yet imagine the life it would eventually create. Then I met Clara Donovan, a seasoned entrepreneur at a networking event I almost didn't attend. She had an aura of confidence and a kind smile, and after listening to me outline my small idea for a boutique marketing agency, she said, "Emma, you've got something rare. Don't let anyone dim it." Let me help you make it real. Clara became my mentor, my guide through the maze of contracts, clients, and late-night brainstorming sessions. There were moments I wanted to quit after a disastrous pitch, when the bills piled up, when the exhaustion of motherhood felt unbearable. But Clara's encouragement, combined with the quiet pride I felt in my children's eyes, kept me going. My first major client came unexpectedly. A small tech startup needed marketing strategies that felt bold and fresh, and my ideas clicked perfectly. When they signed the contract, I remember sitting on the floor of my tiny apartment, holding my children in one arm and the signed papers in the other, tears streaming down my face. For the first time, I realized this was just the beginning. Over the next few years, I worked tirelessly, building a reputation, securing clients, and expanding my agency. I became financially independent, though I shared only modest updates with my family, careful not to boast, to avoid their judgment or envy. I wanted the results to speak louder than words. The house I rented was small, but I decorated it with care. Plants by the windows, art I loved, books stacked neatly in corners. Every choice was intentional, a quiet reflection of the life I was building on my own terms. Even as my business grew, my children remained my center. I never allowed my ambitions to overshadow their milestones, their first steps, first words, first school performances. They were my reminder of why I had refused to accept Margaret's cruel words. Their importance was never in question. It was simply the world that had failed to recognize it at the time. The invitation had arrived in an envelope so plain I almost dismissed it. Margaret's handwriting was unmistakable. "Emma, it's time we talk. Meet me at the new downtown cafe. I need to see you." I smiled quietly to myself, the faint memory of her mocking voice filling my mind. I accepted, not out of fear, but with the calm confidence of someone who had spent years quietly building a life she couldn't imagine. The cafe was small but elegant, with soft amber lighting and an aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Margaret arrived, perfectly coiffed as always, her designer bag swinging from her shoulder, her expression a mixture of curiosity and concealed superiority. I walked in, children in tow, my posture relaxed, my silk blouse catching the light in a subtle shimmer. I had dressed simply but elegantly, the kind of effortless style that comes from self-assurance rather than pretense. "Emma," she said, her voice tentative now, the sharp edge from years ago softened by surprise, or maybe uncertainty. "It's been a while." I nodded, smiling gently. "It has." She looked around, taking in the cafe, but I knew she was searching for signs of struggle. She expected disarray, chaos, perhaps even failure. But what she saw instead was a woman in control, serene, composed, with children who radiated confidence and curiosity, evidence of the love and attention she had so casually dismissed. I let the moment linger, letting her take it all in, the calm authority in my stance, the subtle glow of success that didn't scream but whispered quietly, powerfully. Then I spoke. "Margaret," I began softly, "I've been meaning to tell you something for a long time. The life you assumed we wouldn't have, the children you said weren't important, we've built something extraordinary." I reached into my bag and pulled out a sleek portfolio. Opening it, I revealed contracts, client testimonials, and letters of recognition from major industry leaders. "This," I said, "is my company, my business. I'm the CEO. And yes, my children are thriving, loved, and supported beyond what anyone here ever imagined." Her jaw dropped. I could see the disbelief flicker across her face, the guilt forming as she realized just how wrong her words had been. She stumbled for a response, but I continued. "We've worked hard, quietly, and without the approval of anyone who doubted us. Every late night, every challenge, every sacrifice, it all mattered. And we did it." For the first time in years, I saw Margaret speechless, truly seeing me not as a struggling mother she had judged, but as a formidable woman who had quietly turned the impossible into reality. I watched her eyes soften, a hint of shame and awe mingling together, and I realized the power had shifted. I wasn't just confronting the past, I was living it triumphantly, on my own terms. I took a deep breath, letting the moment stretch. Margaret's disbelief hung in the air like a heavy curtain, but I no longer needed her approval. I only needed clarity and boundaries. The power dynamic had shifted, and it was time to make that undeniable. "Margaret," I began, my voice calm but firm, "I want you to understand something. I'm happy to support growth, but nothing comes for free. If we're going to rebuild a relationship, there are conditions. Things that must change, not for me, but for the sake of respect, accountability, and the well-being of everyone involved." Her lips parted, and I could see the tension coiled in her shoulders. I let her feel the weight of my words before continuing. "First, no more dismissing my children or anyone's worth. They are important and they will always come first. You will listen, understand, and respect their achievements, just as you should have from the beginning. Second, honesty is non-negotiable. I will not tolerate lies, manipulation, or gossip, especially at the expense of family or others' dignity. Third, you must be willing to pursue your own dreams. Don't expect to leech off others or belittle success because it makes you uncomfortable. Growth is your responsibility." Her eyes widened, a mixture of shame and astonishment, but I wasn't finished. I leaned in slightly, softening my tone, showing that firmness and compassion could coexist. "These conditions are not punishments," I said gently. "They are chances to heal, to change, to finally step into the kind of life you've been avoiding through fear and judgment. If you refuse them, that's your choice, but I will continue on my path without compromise." I paused, letting my words sink in. Margaret's pride was battling with the realization that she had been proven wrong. I could see it flicker, the start of acknowledgement, of reflection, and perhaps even regret. But my focus was not revenge, it was empowerment. My life, my children, my accomplishments, they weren't bargaining chips for her lesson in humility. They were proof that resilience, love, and self-respect were far more powerful than judgment ever could be. Finally, I smiled, a quiet, satisfied smile. Change is possible, but only if it comes from genuine effort. I'm offering a chance, not a favor. And from this moment forward, everything we do must be rooted in respect and growth, for all of us. Margaret's shoulders slumped, her defensive walls starting to crack. For the first time, she seemed to see me fully, not the struggling, dismissed woman of the past, but the strong, independent mother and entrepreneur who had silently rewritten our story. I felt a sense of relief and triumph, not because I had won, but because the conditions I set weren't just for her. They were for myself, for my children, and for the healthier relationships we all deserved. Power was no longer a weapon, it was a tool for transformation. Months passed after that meeting, and the changes were subtle but undeniable. Margaret began to show genuine effort, listening, apologizing when necessary, and even celebrating my children's achievements. She enrolled in a course she had long postponed, finally chasing her own ambitions. It wasn't immediate perfection, but it was growth, and I allowed myself to witness it without bitterness. Sitting in my office one quiet afternoon, sunlight filtering through the blinds, I looked around at the life I had built. The walls held paintings I adored, the shelves were lined with books that had inspired me, and the subtle scent of vanilla from a candle lingered in the air. My children's laughter echoed from the living room, a symphony of love and joy that reminded me daily why I had fought so hard. I held the silver locket Grandma Ruth had given me all those years ago, turning it in my fingers. It was a small object, yet it carried immense meaning. It reminded me of the resilience I had nurtured in secret, the belief that strength grows quietly and reveals itself at the right time. That locket had been my anchor, my talisman through sleepless nights, self-doubt, and the sting of dismissal. Reflecting on the journey, I realized the true victory wasn't just my business success or the vindication of proving Margaret wrong. It was the growth, the emotional, personal, and familial evolution that had come from staying true to myself. I had created a life where my children's importance was never in question, where love and respect were central, and where I could offer guidance without sacrificing my boundaries. And yet, even in the triumph, I found grace. I understood that compassion didn't mean submission. Strength didn't mean coldness. I had the power to forgive, to guide, and to protect what mattered most. I had the ability to turn past pain into a future of abundance, not only material but emotional and spiritual. I glanced at my children, their faces radiant and full of life, and whispered softly, more to myself than anyone else, "We did it. We really did it." That locket glimmered in the sunlight, a reminder that everything I had endured had led to this moment of clarity, peace, and fulfillment. The woman I had become was unrecognizable from the frightened, doubted girl I once was, and that realization carried a profound sense of quiet power.